Hey guys!
Hi everyone!
So today we're going to talk about zombies.
Yay!
One of my favorite subjects.
As you can see.
I have many zombie babies and we'll probably be getting many more. I want to talk about, first of all, where the whole zombie mythology originated, where that comes from and how it evolved to what it is today, and also how I see my babies within that mythology, where I feel like they fit. So, yeah, let's get started.
Woo!
Okay, so, when you think of a zombie, modern day zombie, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Of a virus-ridden, shambling, drooling, brain-eating monster.
Yeah. With no real...
self-control.
Yeah, no real complicated motor functions, that sort of thing. In fact, until that World War Z movie, they didn't even move fast. That movie's terrifying.
I want to see that.
That movie's terrifying because they swarm. But anyways, the point is you have this very limited... The zombies are sort of the underdog of the monster because they're very limited in their movements. Often you'll see them dragging a leg.
And they don't have complicated motives.
Yeah, they don't...
They're very base instinct.
Yeah, very base. So, let me explain where that comes from because it might make a little bit more sense. All of this fits together in a really complicated, cool way, and it's fascinating. But originally, zombification, the mythology and the idea comes from Haiti, and it was used as a punishment for severe crimes. So you would have a sorcerer, or bakur, shaman, witch doctor, whatever you want to call it, and they would use this powder to induce zombification. The active ingredient of the powder is tetrodotoxin, or TTX, and it comes from the pufferfish. And TTX is a neurotoxin, and it's hundreds of times more potent than cyanide. So very, very potent stuff. And it acts by blocking the nerve and heart cells' ability to produce electrical impulses. So in minuscule doses, TTX causes a near-death state. So metabolic functions are depressed, breathing and pulse rate are undetectable. So this is where it comes from that they're buried and they come back to life, because essentially they're buried alive. Total paralysis follows the depression of breathing, and the senses in the brain are still intact. So the victim is still alive and aware, but cannot move, cannot open their eyes, and there's no detectable breathing or pulse. So the victim's thought to be dead. They bury them, and a few days after they're buried, they are dug up or they come up out of the grave. And then they're given another powder containing two other drugs, atropine and scopolamine. They are toxic and hallucinogenic compounds from the datura plant, which is also called the zombie cucumber, which I think is funny. The powder puts the victim in a permanent state of delirium and disorientation. So they experience delusions, hallucinations, and they pretty much will do whatever you ask of them. Any kind of menial work, and generally they'd be asked to do it for the people who they committed the crimes against. And for however heinous the crime was, that's how long they were essentially a slave to these people. And then they would stop giving them the powder and they would come out of it. But there's been documented cases of people being under this zombification for 20, 30 years.
That is interesting.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's talk about scopolamine a little more, because let's just talk about the drug portion of zombification. So let's talk about drugs. The pufferfish, where the TTX comes from that induces the original comatose state, is actually a delicacy in places like Japan. Only small amounts of the fish are even edible, and the preparation is extremely difficult. So only highly trained chefs can remove the organs which produce the TTX. When you're eating it, there are still trace amounts of the toxin in the fish. They can't ever completely remove it, so you get this tingling sensation on your tongue and on your lips. So it's very interesting. I don't think that I would want to risk
I can
that.
imagine it must be a good fish, because I can imagine just, craving some puffer fish.
Not for the risk that's involved. And actually, every year a small number of people do die from eating pufferfish, which is not properly prepared. They go into cardiac arrest. There are also cases of people being buried alive after going into the state of deep suspended coma. And there is a practice in Japan of leaving those thought to have been killed by eating pufferfish next to their grave for 3 days before they bury them, so they're not buried alive. And none of that sounds fun to me. I think
No.
I'll just have some halibut.
Yeah, I know, right? Some tuna. Just go get some tuna.
The other drug that's used after they come out of that state to make them very amiable and very willing to do whatever anyone suggests of them is scopolamine. And scopolamine actually has a number of legitimate medical uses. They use it for post-operative nausea and vomiting, seasickness, motion sickness. Scuba divers use it. Gastrointestinal spasms, it helps with irritable bowel syndrome. Hypersalivation, which is drooling. It's sometimes also used as a pre-medication to surgery, mostly commonly via injection. So if you're about to go into surgery and they want to relax you, sometimes they'll use scopolamine. In addition to that, the effects of scopolamine were studied by criminologists in the early 20th century. In 2009, it was proven that Czechoslovakian Communist State Security Police used scopolamine at least 3 times to obtain confessions from alleged anti-state conspirators. Because of the number of undesirable side effects, though, scopolamine was shortly disqualified as a truth serum. And today, and presumably for many years prior, it's been used as a drug to rob people.
Wow.
In Brazil, South America, places like that. Per the U.S. State Department, one commonly and particularly dangerous method that criminals use in order to rob a victim is through the use of this drug. Unofficial estimates put the number of annual scopolamine incidents in Colombia at approximately 50,000.
Wow.
Scopolamine can render a victim unconscious for 24 hours or more. In large doses, it causes respiratory failure and death, but is most often used in bars, and usually on men perceived to be wealthy, and targeted by young, attractive women. So they put it in either their food or their beverages, or sometimes they'll even put it somewhere on their body, and once the men ingest it, they completely will do whatever these people want. So there was a case a couple years ago of a wealthy gentleman who was staying, I believe it was either Colombia or Brazil, it was some place like that, and he woke up and his whole apartment was empty. And he went downstairs to the doorman and he said, "How could you let these people just carry my stuff out of my apartment?" And he said, "Sir, because you told me to." There's evidence of people being on the ATM camera and drawing all of their money out of their bank account.
That's crazy.
And they just wake up essentially with nothing and have no memory of the incident. So it's a very, very dangerous drug outside of its medicinal purposes. But that gives you, again, an idea of you'll just do anything in this state. And as long as they keep giving it to you, you're stuck in that state. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the modern zombie, what we think of when we hear the word zombie. It comes largely from George A. Romero's film Night of the Living Dead. Although they never actually used the word zombie in that film, it was applied later by fans. And the film Return of the Living Dead is where they introduced the popular concept of zombies eating brains.
And that's what we think of today.
Yeah, so that's been pretty consistent since that film. Modern day apocalyptic zombie movies go for the concept of a rage virus that drives its sufferers toward mindless aggression and the need to bite whatever comes near. So the most modern, the most familiar concept of a zombie is you get a zombie virus, you get bit, and then you go on to bite others. So the victims in these rage viruses act rabid. So we all know where that word comes from. And yes, rabies is the inspiration for most zombie stories. It is a bullet-shaped virus that can be transmitted through the bodily fluids like saliva, and once in the body it heads directly for the brain, causing swelling and a zombie movie set of symptoms. So the virus works generally by increasing fear in the victim, and one of the telltale symptoms of rabies, and one of the few not mentioned in zombie movies, is hydrophobia. They become terrified of water.
You'd think they would use that, like in the movies.
I think they want to leave one thing out maybe so you don't connect it, but yeah, it does. The idea does come from the rabies virus. The rest of the symptoms are more consistent with the zombie traits. Patients become afraid of bright lights and moving air, so they gravitate towards dark, confined places. They fall silent in part because they become afraid of the sound of their own voice, so they don't speak properly. Most notoriously, patients develop strange appetites, so animals with rabies, although they can barely swallow water, have been seen to eat sticks and rocks. They also seem to undergo a compulsive need to bite. So scientists think that in the case of rabies, this is the disease trying to strike out and get transmitted to a new host. And so when you look at a rabid dog, for instance, and they have all that drool, that foaming at the mouth, that's just filled with rabies virus. So it is a very effective way to
transmit the virus.
Yeah. So this is the crux of the zombie mythology. A bite means death of the self. So loss of speech, coherence, lucidity, ability to control aggressive impulses, and rebirth as a silent, unresting zombie, endlessly driven to look for more people to bite. So that is the story of zombies from where they originated to where they are now. And I want to tell you how I feel like my babies fit into those stories, where I feel like they
into
fall.
The parameters of the zombie lore.
So, now I want to talk about another one of my favorite subjects, my babies.
Of course.
People have left comments on my videos, and I've seen them in other people's videos and articles about these types of reborns, the zombies in particular, about why would anyone want a dead baby? And that's the phrase they always use, and I personally don't see them as dead babies. I see them as infected. So with my babies, I have sort of a range. I have Simone, who has she looks the most human. She's got the pupil still, but it's a little bit cloudy. It's a different color than a normal pupil. It's a very dark blue, grayish blue rather than black. And she's got a little bit of sludge coming out the mouth, but by far, she looks the most human. So if I take her out to, say, Walmart, and I just put a pacifier in her mouth, she'll pass as a human baby, and no one bats an eye. Then you have Berkeley and Zuli, who they have the more pronounced black sludge at the mouth. They have the glowing, pupilless eyes, and there's really no way to pass them off as human. They're sort of like a second stage.
Yeah.
And then you have Bentley, who is a bit more severe. He would be like stage 3, where he's got a grayer, sort of pallor to his skin, and he's got still the glowing eyes, but one of them's a little off, and he's got more severe stuff going on in his mouth. He's got a tad bit of blood coming out of his ears. He's a bit more severe zombie, but still, I don't see him as dead.
He's like
unquote.
Latent stages of the zombie.
He's like, he looks just a bit more sickly than the others, but he's still very charming. He's still very living looking to me. I don't get a dead baby vibe from any of my babies.
You see them as infected.
Yeah, they're infected.
They have a medical condition, like you.
Yeah, they have a medical disorder. I have my own medical stuff that I struggle with.
They have a special diet. You have a special diet.
They have a special diet, so do I, I don't see them as dead. I see them as infected, and I think it almost makes me have more of a kinship with them. The zombies are the underdogs of the monster world. Like I said before, they're shambling. They're not thought of as being very smart. They've got problems, you know. I just really, they really have my heart. Yeah. So even though I love Elphaba and I love my Vamps and I love Wolfric and I love all my other babies, the zombies, I have a special place in my heart for them because they do struggle with, a virus or a health problem or whatever. So that's how I see them. And we've created horror dolls too. That are scarier.
And I like the horror,
you like
horror
the extreme.
dolls. Yeah.
And I do too, but yeah, that's how I see them. So to answer your question, no, I don't see them as dead babies. I see them as very much living babies and living with this zombie virus.
Right.
So
with their infection.
With their infection. So
and all babies need love.
That's
even
right.
the infected ones.
That's right.
So don't hate.
It's like a disability. They have issues, And yeah, that's how I see them. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed making it.
Me too.
I
enjoyed
about
learning
zombies.
about zombies. It was awesome.
So that's it, guys.
Bye.